I was a senior pastor of a church at 21 years old. So I tell people, if you want to know how much I know about leadership, just close your eyes. What do you see? See nothing. That's what I knew about leadership. I knew nothing about leadership. So, so at that moment, I literally had to ensure that I surrounded myself with a team of people who were smarter than me and had more experience than me. So even early on, so I could appreciate and talking, I had to talk less. The most talking I did when I was a senior pastor was when I was in the pulpit preaching. And then when I'm in meetings, I'm connected with my elders and my deacons and my school principal, and I'm just listening and asking a whole lot of questions. Oftentimes they used to say, you know what, you don't want to ask too many questions because you have people lose confidence in you. My experience is the total opposite. I ask questions to a fault sometimes because I want to understand.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff Lakusta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia, Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in.
Jeff, who are we hosting today?
Well, we're talking to Pierre here, which I'm very excited about. Obviously, we'll do introductions later, but he comes from more of the healthcare industry. And what I love about what we're doing here is just getting to talk to, speaking of diversity, all of these different backgrounds, different experiences of leadership, and still finding that kernel of humanity, which is at the root of all of it and what inspired us to really do this.
I'm excited to speak to Pierre. He has such a demanding job. I know I joke a lot about it because both you and I are in advertising, and I always say that we're not saving human lives. Well, I guess Pierre is saving human lives. And I always have so much respect for anyone in the healthcare, medical industry. Those jobs come with a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. Hey, Pierre.
Hello. How you doing? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to meet you.
Hey, likewise. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Hi,
I'm Jeff,
Pierre.
and this is Nadia, coming at you live.
Nice to meet you.
Excellent.
Pierre, where are you dialing in from?
I'm here in Chicago, Illinois. We actually have some sunshine today, so it's a good day.
Where in Chicago? I used to live very briefly, but I did an internship in downtown Chicago, but lived in Lincoln Park when I was there.
I live in River North, but I work out in Berwyn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is the best time to be in Chicago. I always say Chicago in the summer is the very best place in the U.S., but Chicago in the winter may be the worst place in the U.S.
Yeah, summertime shy is a real thing. I'm a Florida boy, so I thrive in the summertime.
I can't wait to come. I only traveled to Chicago one day for 24 hours for work. It was raining. It was cold. I really look forward to see this the summer version.
Especially up near the river. I live down near the river, and that's where all the action is. So, the boats, the sun, the fun, it's a whole new world.
Okay, so you're hosting, Pierre.
Hey, have your people call my people. We can make it happen. Yeah. And where are you guys located?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia, and we moved here from San Francisco, so still fairly new. I've been here about a year and a half, but we love it out here. I'm from Texas, so this feels a little closer to home for me.
Nice. I'm dialing in from downtown Manhattan as a big gray. As you can say by my accent, I am Italian, and we moved here with my family during the pandemic in July 2020. And been loving it so far.
All right. Excellent. Well, we got the whole map covered. I love it.
For sure. Pierre, what are you up to these days? What's going on in your world?
Just bored, just twiddling my thumbs. Nothing really going on. No, but in all seriousness, yeah. So I'm here in Chicago running a hospital here. Been doing that for the last year and a half. And prior to the pandemic, I was actually in Florida, Central Florida, running a hospital. So as you can imagine, just leading, in healthcare during the pandemic, has brought so many learning opportunities and experiences. But glad to be on this side of it now.
And
Wow.
Pierre, you say, okay, you're not up to much, and then you drop, of course, that you're leading a hospital. But I'll add to that list that you're also writing a book, 21 Ways to Effective Leadership, leading a podcast, World Class Leadership, active on social media. I mean, you've got a lot of different threads, and I'm so thankful that you're joining us today because what Nadia and I are investigating and kind of our hypothesis is that really impressive people like yourself, who frankly have resumes and websites that are intimidating, are also still humans. And that at the core of leadership are some very basic human things. We're, in the space of people working with people, which is usually messy, funny, sad, challenging, all of that comes with it. And you get the fancy bullet point impact at the end of the day, but the reality of getting there is often quite different. And so we'd love to hear more from you if that resonates, and how you find that kind of human reality maybe complicating all the different things that you're up to.
Yeah, no, no, you hit it right on. You made me sound way more important, but definitely I've got to give credit to the great people I get to work with and around. Yeah, the human side of leadership. I mean, where do I start? Prior to being in hospital operations, I was in human resources, and before human resources, I was teaching. And before I was teaching, I was a church pastor. So, interacting with people have been, a common thread throughout my leadership. And I had to learn early on that it's not just about the strategies, the policies, and procedure. It's about how do you connect with people where they are and to bring them where you want them to be. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Had some success, still learning. It's up and down, but it's been great. It's been great.
How did you learn that lesson? Because that is a critical moment, it sounds like, where it was like, I thought it was going to be more about the strategy, but I'm realizing it's a lot more about the people.
Yeah, interesting. So when I first started on the management side of healthcare leadership, I was, you know, found myself sitting around the boardroom table, part of a larger, strategy team, and we were just really kind of scratching our heads. How do we improve our product? How do we make things better? And to be honest, so the first time I'm seeing kind of the other side of executive leadership where everybody wasn't smiling, everybody wasn't nice, people were stressed out, and not having much to add as a newer younger leader. I just really had the idea to say, what, let me go around and connect and speak to my team one-on-one, closed door, and ask them, first off, how are you doing, and what do you think we need to be doing differently? At the time, I had a team of 15 individuals reporting to me, which was, at that time, my career was a lot. And I literally spent the time getting to know them, getting to hear their feedback on, if you were king or queen for a day, what would you do differently? And to be totally candid, I was just shocked. I mean, although they were taking care of one workflow, and I was working on a human resources team at the time, they had so many different ideas. Many people had different pieces of experience from former life. So I realized, man, and I brought that. And the last thing is, I brought that feedback back to the strategy team, and it all just came together. And we were able to find solutions to move further, faster, because we connected with the team on the front line who are doing the work. And I never forgot that. And I try to use that as a common thread for my leadership today, is you don't want to be so disconnected from the front lines that you forget to connect with people where they are.
I really appreciate that you started connecting with your team like that, Pierre. And especially the question, what do we need to do differently, is a very humbling question coming from leadership, especially new leadership. Honestly, when you started listing your experience, starting from church pastor and all the things that you did, I cannot imagine how does it feel to run a hospital though, because allow me to say one of my bombs. I come from Italy, where our healthcare system is very different than the healthcare system here in America. And the only thing I knew about the healthcare system in America was my vision from Grey's Anatomy, which, probably is not exactly the same, that reality. So I would love for you to, if you can, right? I would love for you, if you can, unveil some of the messiness of running a hospital with all the pressure that you might be receiving from a system that is very polarizing.
Man, some of the messiness. And well, let me preface it saying that I am not clinical, and even to this day, I'm scared of needles and I can't stand blood. So my hats off to our healthcare heroes who literally care for patients and deal with that messiness. But the other messiness, looking on the operation side, I mean, healthcare literally it is constantly changing and evolving. When you think you're on a path and you're like, you know what, this is going to be our 3 point strategic plan on how we're going to care for the masses and how we're going to be more efficient, then a new policy comes out that is passed in the legislature, or the local environment shifts because there's a new employee that comes into town, or there's a pandemic that happens, or there's a significant need that changes and affects the population. And as a healthcare operator, you have to be nimble, you have to be quick, and you have to continue working together as a team and can't take anything for granted. For example, I remember, literally just probably, in the first, 3 or 4 months of me in my hospital president job, I realized as I was making my way around, getting to know people, what I didn't know about, never thought about was, whenever there was any kind of facility failure or infrastructure failure, the teams can't do their job. So if construction is happening and water gets cut off or electricity isn't as strong as it needs to be, and we go into action planning mode and it's 24/7. And everything is 911 because we want to make sure we always keep patients safe and we always keep our team members safe. And that piece of it you can never predict. So I'm glad I work for a system organization that we not only look at day-to-day operations, but we invest for the long term. We invest for the future. So it helps the messiness to be not so messy at times.
Mm.
How do you actually learn those skills? When you say you have to be nimble, you have to be team oriented, presumably these are learned skills. I think some folks probably come to the job more ready to do some of those things than others. What does that look like from a hospital perspective? I mean, inside Google, things are always changing quickly. Things are moving fast. Like so much empathy, but I feel like the worlds that we live in to attack the same problems are really different too.
Yeah, I truly believe, in my experience, you can't be afraid to fail. And when you do fail, fail fast, right? We can't say, what, this is how we've done it 20 years ago. Because literally, first of all, a lot of the workforce is getting so much younger, they can't relate. And then you have the other piece of it. I mean, the world continues to change, and we have to try new things to be innovative, and people change. So I truly believe you learn that by trial and error. You learn that by saying, what, we're gonna look at go a new direction, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, let's quickly pivot and understand that. But at the same time, we've got to continue to connect with people, because people at the front lines will tell you what's really going on, what's really happening, listening to your customers, listening to your patients, and that becomes a guiding light.
Can you
Mm.
bring to life that idea of failing and failing fast? I'd kind of call it risk taking. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but this is something that, especially in the economic times that we're in, I can leave it at that with a hand wave, maybe. I think there's more anxiety around risk taking than ever before, and it's incredibly empowering to hear a leader like you say, "Yeah, I want to be taking risks." Not, I'm sure, ridiculous ones, but risks every day that help us get better. But how do you really think about that? And is there an example of a time you took a risk that either worked really well or a time that you took a risk that maybe didn't work so well and what happened?
Yeah, no, great question. Great question. I think we have to look at everything on a scale, if you will, right? In healthcare, there's so many hospitals in Chicagoland, so many hospitals throughout the country and the world. So when we talk about innovation, oftentimes with work, we don't try to introduce new or innovative things across the board. So, for example, hand hygiene is always important, right? Studies have shown the more that healthcare individuals wash their hands, right, it keeps patients safe. Period. So when we try to find new ways and new things to make it even easier and even more palatable for our healthcare leaders and frontline workers who are so busy, right? We always want to make sure that's at the forefront. So before we install a new piece of technology to help assist with that and investing hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, we will probably start in a smaller unit. And before we even roll it out, we'll say, hey, team members, what do you think about this new piece of technology or this new process? So before we roll things out and say, this is what you got to do and deal and live with it, we bring the teams in and say, what do you guys think? Will this make your job easier? Does this make sense? And I remember a time we brought a product in at one point and we told the vendors, hey, give us a display and presentation. And the team members say, that's not going to work. That's not going to work, because our patient flow and how we move things, we can't, continually go to one side of the unit every single time, but we need to be much more nimble and have accessibility so that we can continue taking care of patients. So we had to say, team, let's scratch, this vendor, this idea, and let's bring someone else in that can meet the needs of the patient of our caretakers.
When I hear you talking, Pierre, I find your job so complicated. Here's why. Um, the difficult in dealing with people that come from a very different perspective. I would assume that doctors, nurses, like all the people in the clinical field, are driven by this genuine human desire of saving lives, right? And assisting and improving a situation. Whereas it looks to me that people that are running a hospital, they come from a more probably business background and corporation that is, let us look at the numbers. We are seeing that if you wash your hands, you're gonna keep patients safer by X% and all of it, or when you need to deploy one of your processes. So materially speaking, how do you flex your business side, right, to meet the needs of people that are driven, let's say, by a more higher call, right? I've met recently with a mom, she's an ER doctor, and she did say, they're asking me now to train on all the financials and all the things insurance wise and etc. So, how you as a leader flex your style to meet these two very different categories with two different needs?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I appreciate you sharing that experience. I think in my experience, what I found was when I'm at the table, I'm doing less talking and more listening. Where I want to hear, because as you can mention, physicians are scientists, they're brilliant. Your frontline clinicians, they're go-getters, type A. I want to solve the world and fix everybody, right? And then the administrators are trying to put it all together to make sure it's financially viable so we keep the doors open. And if I feel like I found that if I lead with financials, I lose the room and I don't build confidence. I find that if I overlook the scientists in the room and the years of study that he or she has had, I've lost that individual. And if I don't appreciate the type A hard worker that wants to butter the bread of patient and walk into the bathroom, I have to basically kind of almost like as a symphony orchestra, kind of help orchestrate all that together. But that doesn't come from talking, doesn't come from flexing how smart I may think I am. It's listening and then crystallizing everything to say, team, how do we make this work? And the more I listen, actively listen, I find that I put myself in a better situation to help to better lead, but with the help of my team.
I have this budding philosophy in my mind on career trajectory that basically goes in the beginning of your career, the better you are at talking, to go with the words that you used, the better your career will go. Execute, get the work done, be the expert in the room. But then there's this moment where it transitions, and the better you are at listening, actually is what advances your career from there. And I'm curious, because you've had quite an interesting career, and I think I'd be an idiot not to ask about, you have experience as a pastor. How is that serving you? But what are you finding in terms of that ability to get things done? Let me be the one in the room who's driving versus I need to listen, find the patterns, share the feedback, as you did in that first story you shared of, first time hospital manager.
Yeah, man. I would say starting with, and this is an important note, not to, to my own horn, but just gives context. I was a senior pastor of a church at 21 years old. So I tell people, if you want to know how much I knew about leadership, just close your eyes. What do you see? See nothing. That's what I knew about leadership. I knew nothing about leadership. So, so at that moment, I literally had to ensure that I surrounded myself with a team of people who were smarter than me and had more experience than me. So even early on, so I could appreciate and talking, I had to talk less. The most talking I did when I was a senior pastor was when I was in the pulpit preaching. And then when I'm in meetings, I'm connected with my elders and my deacons and my school principal, and I'm just listening and asking a whole lot of questions. Oftentimes they used to say, you know what, you don't want to ask too many questions because you have people lose confidence in you. My experience is the total opposite. I ask questions to a fault sometimes because I want to understand. I want to better, and I want to say, you know what, I may not know the answer. I know someone that could connect us to get us closer to that. So when I look at, I take that all my experiences, I realize that, not only just actively listening, but also asking the right questions at the right time really helped propel me, but most importantly, propel the teams that I worked with. I would say that, the listening piece is a big component, yeah, but definitely asking questions because at some point you got to produce, right? You got to act. I'm not in my role because I'm sitting around asking questions, taking notes, but I got to use those. So I continue to build my team, uplift them, build that positive culture so they feel confident to share and share openly.
I love what you just said, the listening to understand, and how this ties with the questioning, but also with creating the right culture for them to respond. Because I hear and we hear a lot of people always saying, oh my God, listening, questioning. But the role of creating the right culture to respond, I think, is worth calling that out, because you could be the best listener, you could be the best questioner ever. But if your people don't have the psychological safety to give you the real responses, they could just sugarcoat what they're thinking. So I'm wondering, Pierre, what do you do when you do listen, you do ask the question, and what comes in return might be extremely uncomfortable because you're doing all this work of creating the culture, and that would entitle people to just saying it in the face. And sometimes the truth is a bit uncomfortable. So, how do you, what's your advice there?
Yeah, when the truth becomes uncomfortable, my experience, you have to learn, and it's easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. We can't take, as leaders, we can't take things personally. It's oftentimes because the person is looking you in the eye or writing you the email or on the other side of the phone call, you're like, I failed as a leader, you know. And I had to quickly learn that no, it is not personal, but this is someone sharing openly and wanting to do what's best for the organization. Here, you've asked for the feedback. Here it is, and it's not always going to be positive. So I've learned to first of all not take it personal, but also to recognize and then to also thank the person for giving the feedback. Because sometimes it's all right. The psychological safety you mentioned is someone shared the feedback. Now they don't know how I'm going to respond. And if I don't start off by saying thank you for that feedback, or I appreciate you sharing, I thank you for your vulnerability. I needed to hear that, and let me take that. And that's tough as a leader to even say those, to hear the feedback and then say those words is tough. But what has helped me, and I found this, I learned this from a mentor, is creating that psychological safety starts with recognizing and appreciating the small wins because that builds momentum for the bigger wins. When people know that, you know what, that leader, he or she really appreciates me because on Monday they recognized me for something. Last month They recognize me for something. They're building this positive culture where they won't be scared to ask those tough questions or to put me on the spot, if you will, for fear of retaliation.
Mm.
I think that's a wonderful tip, and I'd offer what I hear in 25 minutes of conversation that would also be contributing to this positive culture is your humility as a leader is like front and center for me, which is an incredible trait that just seems to come naturally for you. But I'm curious about that. If you think of yourself as a humble person, and is that something that you practice? Is that something that you had to learn along that way, or has this been a part of who you are your whole life?
Well, thank you for that. I try to be a humble leader, and as you can imagine, the higher you go, it's easy for someone to think I did this on my own. I would definitely say my upbringing, having immigrant parents, immigrating from Haiti, my father being a pediatrician and my mother working in finance and banking for years. I literally saw them working hard, and along the way, always reminding me that nothing is promised. It's not just about working hard, but also giving. My father runs a nonprofit. My mother very involved, not only in church but in the community. So literally, I remember growing up spending holidays not just at the dinner table but out in the community serving, and that's the model and example. My parents taught me. So even in leadership, it was always about service, and that reminded me. So when someone gives me that harsh feedback, or I'm tempted to take things personal, I remember, what, I'm here for the greater good. And sometimes it'll take a gut check, and then I think the second piece is, I also was a basketball coach, volunteering for about 12 or so years, and working with students and working with high schoolers. It humbles you very, very
They keep you
quickly.
humble.
They humble me very quickly, oftentimes as I lead them, because high schoolers, kids, they're so honest and open, and they'll tell you that wasn't a good idea, or I don't think that was right. And as I took those experiences into the boardroom, if you will, it reminds me that I got to continue to stay humble and stay open to learning.
I want to say a huge thank you for saying this, Pierre. And I was not expecting it. I'm so grateful that you went there because, as a parent, that comes from humble beginnings, but is now in a very comfortable position. My daughters get to enjoy a very comfortable lives. I'm often confronted with how will they learn what does it mean to stay humble and giving back when their life is already all shaped, great schools and comfortable house and all that they want. And what you just said about your parents and how they've been prioritizing giving back and connecting to the greater good is very powerful. And I'm gonna probably take even a step forward to that, because how can society and the systems continue fueling our children with those principles? Of course, we parents have to do it and prioritizing. I need to do a better job there. So this recording today is actually inspiring me to take action as a family. How can also the systems, right, encourage our youngest to talk about these things, the importance of giving back?
Yeah, no, that's, man. I think we all need to continue hearing that, and we live in such a very, I this I culture, right? Is that what I get out of it? But I think in leadership, we can only keep teaching that if we model that, right? So we got to see the individuals. I have team members who literally are, working full time in healthcare administration, or they find time to run a nonprofit, or to do things for the less vulnerable and affecting the social determinants of health. And we always try to do a good job try to do a decent job of taking a pause and highlighting those individuals who are not just doing their job, their W-2 jobs, but who are making an impact and volunteering. And as we recognize those things, I've always been taught what you permit, you promote, right? So you allow people to say, it's okay to balance a few things as you're giving back and doing your job. It's not just about your 9 to 5, but how you're making the world a better place And what better avenue to do that, not just in healthcare, but also in leadership, because people are looking at your example.
Mm.
We have had an amazingly positive conversation, and so I want to poke that a little bit because you're in a field that is uh, challenging in terms of the space, right? People's lives. You're in a very competitive environment, and leading a team that is focused on getting results in that environment must come with bits that you really love and bits that you really don't love. And so I guess my question is, what are those favorite parts of your job? And what are the parts of your job that you're like, oh, that's what drains me? Those are the pieces that really, take from my bucket.
Yeah, the part I love the most about my job is, definitely, connecting with the teams and working with people from all different backgrounds and leading them on this continuum of this journey, right? Helping to knock down barriers. I've always loved puzzles growing up. So I see healthcare leadership as a puzzle, right? Where I'm trying to fit this piece and find the right piece. And I love that. And just gathering around, I love sports, love teams, and really helping that team win and finding those small wins. If I had to say something that drains me, will probably be the unpredictable nature of healthcare, right? I pride myself on being a planner, but even in my weekly planning, I have to leave room for those fires that come up. I got to leave room for, okay, at 2:05, I am not going to be meeting with all of the residents. At 2:05, we're calling, a group meeting to talk about what we need to do tomorrow at 9 a.m. But what I've also appreciated is, I tell my team, at times we got to embrace the suck, right? And when you embrace the suck, it's like, you know what, guys, it could be far worse. But if we're going to be doing this crazy thing called leadership, we'll get to do it together. So let's still find the positives out of all of it. And then, as life has it, we look down 2, 3 weeks down the road and we're like, remember back then when we thought the whole world was caving in because of this new initiative or this new policy that came out from the state, and we did just fine. And patients write us those letters saying, thank you for taking care of our loved one, or the employees say, thank you for giving me a chance to be part of a bigger team.
That's so beautiful. Part of me is growing a secret desire. How beautiful would it be if industries would have to cross leaders? So, Pierre, what if you were to do a month at Google and bringing your leadership spirit and your principle? Wouldn't that be amazing? Tech and hospitals and vice versa.
Oh man, that'd be pretty cool, man. I don't know. I may get kicked out. I got a lot of crazy ideas, but but
I
that
feel
would be.
scared about doing your job. I don't know, Pierre.
Oh man, that would be pretty cool. No, I like that concept. I mean, we probably need to do even more of that, right? I mean, I know we do that in conferences and sharing best practices, but the best practice is being immersed in it, right?
Hmm. So, Pierre, as we approach the end of this podcast, we always ask our guests, what is your one phrase or your one word of advice that you want to leave our listeners with?
Man, one piece of advice, I would say, please don't take yourself or life too seriously. If the pandemic showed us anything, life is so short. Our loved
Mm.
ones are here today and they could be gone tomorrow. So make time for yourself, make time for your family, make time for your loved ones, and don't take anything for granted. And I've lived that, I've seen that, and I'm trying to improve on that every single day.
So powerful. I really love it. And so you said you have a podcast and that you're writing a book. Where people can find you and what would you like people to do for you actually?
Oh man, I mean, you guys are too kind. Yeah, so I actually published my first book about 8 months ago. So it's out on Amazon, 21 Ways to Effective Leadership. So you just Google, Pierre Monice, look it on Amazon, you'll find it there. In my podcast, World Class Leadership. But honestly, what I want people to do is, if any piece of this resonated, I share from a leadership. I'm passionate about leadership development. So I want to hear from them. Things they've learned in leadership and how maybe I could help them, in their leadership journey. So they can find me on different all social platforms, Pierre Moniz. And I want to connect with them, hear your story. and see how we can uplift each other.
Amazing. We will absolutely put that in the show notes so folks can check that and connect with you easily through that. Pierre, thank you so much for spending time with us. Great conversation. I learned a lot.
Oh,
I
I learned
loved
so
it.
much. Thank you all. You guys are awesome, and thanks for the work you're doing. And looking forward to seeing the final product, of all the conversations we're having, because I'm sure there's going to be dynamic learning nuggets.
I look forward to read a book. I'm always so quick. As soon as we have a guest with a book, I'm gonna go buy it. So
Good
I'm
diet.
excited for that.
I'm on
Thank
board. You're so
you.
kind. You guys take care.
You should have a
Bye.
wonderful
All
weekend.
right.
Bye.
Yeah, take care.
What
Mhm.
a so amazing conversation. Absolutely. As we said at the beginning, the power of getting out of our industry is really special to me because while I love learning lessons from tech leaders and advertising leaders, to learn somewhat similar lessons, but to hear the impact they're having really makes them resonate for me at a whole different level. Asking that question that he shared of what would you do differently? Simple
Mm.
question, but in the concept of a hospital means something really different to me, and just how powerful it can be in changing processes that affect people's lives. It's an amazing example of human leadership making a big difference.
And how brave of him of asking that question new in his job as a young leader, because we can imagine the healthcare system, there might be a lot of, you know, old style
Yeah, yeah,
dinosaurs.
absolutely. All right, Nadia. So, what is your top takeaway from that discussion?
I love that you said top in order to say, Nadia, think about the top, because I always have a lot of them. Interesting that my top takeaway came towards the end. I thought it was another one, and then I changed my mind when he said, "As a leader, you learn to not take things personally and to always thank for the feedback." And this for me today is a huge takeaway. Is the first time we hear on our show someone saying this. And the reason why is my takeaway is because it's so easy to get wrapped up into what is it that we are doing, because we are working so hard in being the leaders and getting people and really doing all the effort. And sometimes we might disconnect from the fact that we are dealing with humans.
Mm,
And for a human to come to leadership, so to come to someone in a position of power and give feedback about something, assuming that is a constructive feedback, let's put it that way, it might take a lot of courage. It does take a lot of courage. And so, starting a conversation by saying, "Thanks for your courage in sharing this feedback with me," and really having the internal strength to not take it personally, whatever that is. Someone might even say, "Hey, Nadia, you know what? I don't like the way you run your meetings," or "What you did really hurt me," whatever. But taking the ability to thank that person and do not take it personally and wanting to do something to address that situation, for me, it's a sign of very mature leadership. And it's definitely something that I continue to learn and that I want to prioritize.
I really like that takeaway. It connects in a funny personal way to my top takeaway, which will always be to remember to listen more. Because when I first learned that lesson, it was through an act of courage from someone that reported to me many years ago, who timed how long I was talking in our one-on-ones and shared back the proportion. And it really ripped off the band-aid. Now the full story another time, but it was an eye-opening moment, and I think you're right, that courage. But I love to talk. I love to share wisdom, to have ideas, to do, and to remember that I'm putting a cap on my own ability to have impact if I don't focus more intentionally on listening and asking the right questions, is a lesson that I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing. So I love the way that Pierre made that come to life for me. And I can see moments when I reflect on today where I'm like, oh, I probably talked a little too much in that meeting or that meeting. So it's a
Mm.
constant reminder that I need.
Well, thank goodness you have a show that is a podcast where you are supposed to talk and share your wisdom. So I like that.
100%. It's a proper channel for it. Exactly.
Well, it was great seeing you and seeing Pierre today. Thanks for everyone that continues to listen and to support 99 Humans. Go check our website, 99humans.com. There's a lot of stories on top of Pierre's ones and fantastic leaders. Give us a like to our LinkedIn post and follow our page and follow our social media. We do this for us, for you, and for everyone else that connects with those interesting topics. So thank you for supporting.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to see you, Nadia.
Great seeing you. Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.